Hi, everybody. I'm M.K. Fain.
And I'm Sasha White.
And this is Identity Crisis.
Today's episode is part 2 of our 2-part series on how to survive cancellation. Last week, you saw us talk about our experiences and share some memories of how it was for us when we were in the throes of being canceled. And this week's episode is a little bit more about how to overcome it in the medium to long term, and we talk about how you can take your negative cancellation experience and hopefully turn it into something positive in your life.
But before that, it's time for our weekly segment, In Case You Missed It, where we summarize the events in gender critical and radical feminist world that you might have missed this week in 60 seconds or less. And Sasha, you are going to get us started, so let's go ahead and get that timer up, and whenever you're ready.
Okay, here's the countdown. MK, count me down.
Okay, in 3, 2, 1, go.
In news from Connecticut, the Seoul case was dismissed by the judge on Sunday, the 25th of April. To give you a little bit of background, the Seoul case was where 4 female athletes are taking a case against the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference for a policy that allows biological males to compete in the girls' athletic events. Since the males have started competing, 2 of them, in 2017, they've taken between them 15 women's state championship titles and more than 85 opportunities to participate in higher level competitions away from female track athletes. So the judge, who previously refused to recuse himself after requesting that everyone in court refer to the male athletes not as boys, dismissed the case, but ADF will appeal it, and hopefully we will see a different outcome. If you want to learn a bit more about the case, you can see on my channel an interview with one of the athletes, Alana Smith, and her lawyer.
Thank you, Sasha, for that update.
Yes. Now, MK, your ICYMI, whenever you're ready, count you down.
Okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Caitlyn Jenner, formerly known as Bruce Jenner, who is currently running as a Republican in the California governor's race, recently was caught by TMZ on camera saying that he does not support trans girls competing in female sports. This is quite a shocker, since Caitlyn Jenner is currently probably the most famous trans woman in the world right now. This was especially influential, I would say, because Jenner was actually an Olympic gold medalist in the decathlon back in 1976. And to this day, a women's decathlon does not even exist in the Olympics. So everyone is having a hissy fit about this. All the trans activists online, they're trying to revoke awards and such that Jenner has been gifted, and kind of decrying him as no longer the icon for the movement that he once was. So weird twist of events. We're agreeing with Caitlyn Jenner on this one. So yes, you're absolutely right. Good job, Caitlyn.
Perfect. Great job, Caitlyn. Thank you. Send our love to the Kardashians.
Or don't.
Or maybe don't. Just leave it. Okay.
Okay, your turn. Ready?
Yes.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
On April 27th and 28th, Maya Forstater's case was appealed in England, and this is a case about belief discrimination. So should employers and service providers be able to discriminate against people who share the belief that there are 2 sexes and people cannot change sex? If you don't know what happened, Maya Forstater was a fellow with a consultancy contract, and she did not have her contract renewed after having written about gender self-ID and critiquing gender self-ID and expressing her belief that there are 2 sexes. The judge in her case ruled that this belief was not worthy of respect in a democratic society, which meant that the belief could not be a protected philosophical belief. That is what was just appealed, and the judgment has not been handed down yet. I believe it will be handed down in a number of months, so we are waiting to find out what will happen. It is a landmark case for free speech and for the potential of protecting these beliefs, which also would have, if applied in the US, would have helped MK and I, who were both fired in similar situations. You can donate to Maya's case on her crowdfunder, which will be linked below.
Great. Yeah, really looking forward to seeing the result of that. And hashtag I stand with Maya.
So one more ICYMI. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Women's Liberation News Radio, WLRN, is celebrating their 5-year anniversary on May 6th this week. They're celebrating 5 years of delivering monthly content for feminists, having never missed a month in 5 years. Each month, they talk with top feminist activists and scholars from around the world, promote women's music, report on world news, and offer up totally excellent radical feminist commentary. WLRN was founded by a fellow cancel woman, Thistle Pedersen, who was canceled in the Madison activist and music scene after doing interviews with feminists like Sheila Jeffries, Megan Murphy, Julie Bindel on the local free speech segment of a radio station. Her story will actually be coming out on 4W later this week, so definitely stay tuned for that. And you can find the link to the 5-year celebration in the description down below. Congratulations, WLRN. We're really sending our sisterhood and solidarity over to our fellow show. Congratulations.
Congratulations, and very impressive 5 years in the running. Also, just to clarify from my ICYMI about Maya for Stater, this isn't a judgment that would be applied in the US. I just only meant to say if this could be applied in the US, hypothetically, that would have been great for us. And that is what we want someday, to have
it's a nice hypothetical. Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's useful to help demonstrate to people how, these sorts of cases are kind of a universal problem.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And of course, our legal system is still influenced by the English system. So, all right, now I guess we can get started in our episode.
Today, we are going to dive into part 2 of our series on how to survive being canceled. Last week, we told you our personal stories of being canceled and what the immediate aftermath was like in the crisis. We covered the emotional ups and mostly downs that we went through, and then how we started to sort of pull out of them at the very end. So if you missed that episode, definitely go back and watch it first, or else you'll be out of the loop on this one. But today, we want to talk about I'll show you some of the behind the scenes of how you build back after you've been canceled. And I think this also applies to how you build back after you face kind of a tragedy that forces you to start over in general, whether it's being fired, maybe not from being canceled, but maybe you just got laid off, or, maybe you ended up having a major family crisis that forced you to start over in some way. Maybe you went through a divorce. I think that these are things that can apply in a lot of situations. And so we're going to cover how we survived being canceled and bounced back to become the people you see today.
Yeah. And, a lot of people get fired and a lot of people deal with something that is so life-shattering like this. But not everybody has a mission or an agenda or a movement. So in a way, we were sort of infinitely lucky and well-positioned because we got canceled into careers, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
And, it's true that people can build careers on being canceled. And one thing that I want to start with, and then maybe this can lead us into some other things, is this concept of pick your poison. So I got this phrase from Jordan Peterson. As people know, I also weirdly like Jordan Peterson. But Jordan Peterson had this quote where he said, pick your poison. You're going to suffer in life. We all suffer in life. There's suffering waiting for all of us. But pick your poison of staying silent and suffering and conforming, or speaking out and then suffering the consequences of that. And when you do swallow the speaking out poison, there is so much glorious, glorious freedom. And just empowerment. And it's funny because empowerment is one of those annoying and overused words, and the live fems, everything is empowering to them. Everything that's degrading is empowering to them. But speaking out about the truth, the unpopular truth, is empowering in a psychological, emotional way, and perhaps in a financial way, right, M.K.?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I experienced the same thing as far as that empowerment. I think you'll probably get into this side of it a little bit more, but I definitely feel way more free now. I mean, I'm probably the happiest I've been in my adult life today than I was either back when I was working as a software engineer or making a really big salary, or back when I was working as an animal rights activist, making no salary and paying rent by nannying. And, I'm honestly really happy with how things turned out for me, and that it's kind of crazy to think about where I was in the immediate crisis aftermath versus where I am today. And I wish that I could go back and show a picture of me today and where I'm at in my life to that woman who was really feeling a lot of pain around having lost everything. And you're absolutely right. I really do feel like I was very lucky in the sense that I got canceled into a career. A lot of people have asked me, and I've told this story to some degree in various places, but how did you start 4W? And what a lot of people don't realize is I didn't have some big grand plan of starting like a feminist alternative to Medium or anything like that when I started it. A lot of my life and where I'm at today has just been a series of making one small decision at a time that continued to grow my platform, grow my ability to be independent, and eventually just build upon the work that I was continuing to do over a long period of time. And I think that that is important to point out to people, because right now, if you look at where 4W is, I mean, I'm super proud of it. And it feels like, oh, I could never do that. It's so like how do you start? But for me, it started all with 2 articles on Medium. And then that spiraled into more articles on Medium. And then on Medium, actually, I created a publication. They allow you within their platform to kind of segregate your articles into a specific like branded theme. And so I started 4W first as a publication on Medium. And then from there, I realized, oh, they're canceling gender critical articles and my account could get deleted. So I better do something to back up these articles. And then I started 4w.pub. I bought a domain name and I set up this website. And it does help that I had web experience, but there's ways that you can do this with no coding and like without needing to know how to program. And so I set up 4W and started just copying my articles over there. Like every time I post on Medium, I copied it over, started a Patreon. I was not getting a lot at first, but I just, started at the bottom of all my articles saying like, I have a Patreon. And now after, eventually I got canceled from Medium. And so now it's only on my own platform, 4w.pub. And now after doing this just consistently, putting out new articles for a couple years, I now provide a small income for myself from it, as well as an income for other radical feminist writers, which is the part that I'm really proud about, is being able to provide income for other women who are putting their lives out there on the line to write about these issues. And I think that what I really want to encourage people to do is to find ways that they can build independence into their lives. 4W is not my biggest source of income right now, but it is a major one. Thanks to 4W, I know that if one of my other big sources of income dropped all of a sudden, that I would be okay. I would still be able to pay rent next month thanks to having built that up over time. And I think that this process of taking something that's happened to you, turning it around in a new and positive and fresh way that people can relate to and experience something from, and that provides value to people, then can provide value to you in the long run and set you free from this, trap of being in, these 9-to-5s where you're forced to silence yourself all the time and, your boss could fire at any second for being the wrong kind of woman.
Yeah. And, I was in the literary world, and that is supposed to be the place of all places where we can explore the dark side of the human mind, where we can explore difficult and thorny ideas, where we can say things that you're not supposed to say. And the fact that that's not what the literary industry is today makes me so grateful that I got booted out of it. I mean, I don't think it would have been very much longer before I had realized that that's where I was. It would have maybe been gradual, or maybe I would have woken up one day and realized that here I was in this awful McCarthyist, conformist, cookie cutter industry where everybody was going along with untruths and with witch hunting. So a lot of industries are like that right now. Publishing, journalism, academia, tech, it sounds like. A lot of these sort of like professional class fields. And and certainly sort of literary or intellectual fields. And there is just no value in it if you can't express those dangerous ideas. What is the damn point of writing books if they're safe? And I've said this before, but what I worry about is the loss of the books right now that we're not getting because they are the 1984s and the Brave New Worlds and the, anything, I'm going to try to talk about Tommy's Dot more on my Crossroads series. Tommy's Dot is contraband Soviet literature. So literature that was published outside the Soviet Union because it was, it would have been censored within, but by Soviet writers. And the word Tommy's Dot is in Russian. Tom means there, like over there. So it was published outside of the country. But this was literature like Solzhenitsyn and even Nabokov. And when we think of Solzhenitsyn, he's like speaking out against the gulags and against the ravages of communism and Stalinism. So that's what literature means to me. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this. I'm going off now on just a tangent about literature. That's not exactly what this is about, but I realize it's very, very relevant to me. And I think because I just don't think this is unique. I think there must be so many other people in a similar situation. Maybe it's not in publishing, maybe it's in academia, where you have this idealistic vision of what your field should be and what you want your career to be and what you want to bring into this world and what you want your work, your life's work to be. And the devastation of being canceled is so much better than I think what would have been the long-term slow devastation of having that dream crushed and seeing that there was no possibility of bringing all those things to life.
Yeah, they essentially ripped the Band-Aid for you.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to go through this long disillusionment process. It's just kind of, you got your disillusionment all in one go, just over with it, done. And you're right, that is kind of a gift in some ways. I know people who work as counselors who have been going through this process of disillusionment in their field because people get into counseling when they want to help people, when they want to make people's lives better. And instead, in order to keep their licenses as social workers, they have to adhere to this affirmative only model when it comes to dealing with kids with gender dysphoria and kids who say that they're trans. And I know many counselors who are really disturbed by the current state of things and are really starting to feel this disillusionment about their field. And I think that this can happen in a lot of ways. And it's not just, disillusionment over gender identity, but, when you really put your hopes for the future in something that is like outside of your control, your hopes for the future, and that I'm going to be a counselor and that like counseling is going to help people. And I think that's something that I've really started to shift towards, is rather than putting my hope in, I'm going to get my dream job at this organization or that organization, or, I'm going to become, a doctor, a lawyer, a counselor, or whatever. Like I instead am being Mary Kate, and Mary Kate is the product to a degree. Like I bring things to the world, and some of those things are really, really different from each other. Like I code and, help with feminist tech projects like Spinster. And then on the other hand, I write and edit. And then on the other hand, I also like work for nonprofits. And, I have all of these different skills, and trying to assign that to a single like identity, if you will, I have found I work better and I enjoy my life more and I enjoy my work more when I could just kind of do what I want and find someone who finds value in that in the moment, and then put my energy into what I feel like doing. Not everyone's like that. Some people really do have like a single focus that they are really super passionate about. But I think that making your own way in the world is really powerful. And you're right, it's this mental freedom that it's not just the financial freedom, which is huge. I mean, the fact that thanks to my supporters on various platforms, Spinster included, shout out to all Spinster patrons, thanks to everyone who has found value in my work, I do have a degree of financial freedom, but it's because of that financial freedom, I have this emotional, mental freedom. I don't have to be scared about what I'm going to say. I don't have to be scared about who my friends are. And that, I think, is ultimately the biggest freedom. It's, kind of like being in an abusive relationship, where you feel like you can't leave because you can't afford to leave, because you don't know how you would survive on your own. And I think that a lot of the ways that jobs and like the current way our economy works, including especially with health insurance, really trap people into these abusive dynamics with their job. And instead you become a hostage and you are forced to comply, to conform. And if you don't, then you will be put in danger, of losing your livelihood, of losing your home, of losing your health care, of, there are, some really worst case scenarios that you can spiral those out to. Mm-hmm. And so finding this sort of freedom is, I think, really the most powerful thing that a woman can do for herself in the society. I mean, really anyone, but I think especially women, because we especially are, I think, likely to not have financial independence.
Yeah, and what you said made me think of something that we've talked about when we've done more advicey episodes about psychological tips. And one of our main ones was bring the locus of control back into yourself, meaning don't allow for the sense of control and ownership over your life to be located outside of you. Now, obviously, this isn't something that everyone in every situation can just control. There are external factors. Always there. Do we really have free will? Okay, that's a different question. But the question here is, do you take responsibility for what you do in life and for your feelings as you go through life, or do you assign them to someone else externally? And it's funny because that also comes down to a lot of what we critique as gender critical people. We critique this mindset that says, I am only valid because someone gets my pronouns, right? I'm only valid if I pass, or if people say that I'm something that I'm not, something that I imagine myself to be. If you bring the locus of control back into yourself, it doesn't matter what other people say about you or think about you, if they validate you or not. It might still hurt your feelings, that's fine, but it doesn't steer your ship. You know what I mean? And yes. I think that's similar to what you're talking about. And not everybody has the means, unfortunately, to leave their oppressive 9-to-5 jobs, if that is the case for them. But you can take steps to make yourself more independent, or you can take one big step and just take a stand and just throw yourself into that, and you can pick your poison.
I really appreciate you saying that sometimes you can just take the stand and throw yourself into it. There have been times in my life when I was out of a job with zero intent to be so, and with no backup plan, with nowhere to go. I mean, there was one time I was fired from what I thought was my dream job. I was so excited to get this job. It's a feminist nonprofit. And I just had like a personality conflict with my boss, essentially. We just couldn't get along. And I had no savings. I was massively in debt with my student loans, still am, but whatever. And I was not in a good living situation. I really felt like when I got fired from that job that I was going to drown. Like I did not know what I was going to do next. And I have found over and over again that people who have been through these situations before of like being in a sink or swim moment, like where you have to figure something out, and people figure it out, not always, but I think that there is a really specific skill that you can even cultivate of when something really bad happens, jumping into action. Maybe it's a personality thing. I don't know. I guess I don't want to say too much that anyone can be like this, but I have in time learned how to, instead of shut down in a crisis, jump into action on something. So, when I got fired from that job, I jumped into action applying for jobs as a nanny, because I had worked as a nanny in college and I knew I could get a nanny job quickly because they always tend to need someone fast, or they need someone to start this week. And so I worked as a nanny for 3 months until I found the next job, and I managed to continue paying rent this way. And So I do think that sometimes being pushed out of the nest, like being put into the situation where you have to find a way to make it, I think that actually provides a really valuable experience for people in life. I think it also provides a little bit of perspective on what rock bottom really is. That wasn't even truly my rock bottom. I've been in situations where I was living with an abusive ex and working as a hotel maid cleaning toilets, and being in these situations where you are doing literally anything to make rent, to save up to get out of your situation, to make it to the next day. Like, once you've been through that, I think your rock bottom, like, it feels a little bit like you know that you've survived that before. And so it feels less scary to imagine that you might have to be there again as much as you don't want to be. So I think for a lot of people, if you've never been fired before, if you've never been out on your own before, if you've never had to deal with this immediate crisis of, oh my God, how am I going to pay rent? Then maybe you don't actually know your own ability to survive and overcome. And maybe you're underselling yourself and what you could do. And again, I recognize that there are situations where it's just not the case. There are people who, based on whatever life circumstances have thrown at them, like truly you do get stuck in a cycle of poverty. My family was in that cycle of poverty for a very long time, and I'm very fortunate to have been one of the few in my family who broke out to some degree. But it is really hard. I'm not saying it's not, but I also think that people who maybe haven't experienced that don't know what they could do if they were forced out on their own.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, it's true. People do stay in careers because inertia, right? The inertia factor.
Mm-hmm.
And you just allow yourself to keep going day in, day out, and you don't try something new because you don't think you can.
So I think also beyond getting fired for your political beliefs and then going and starting a YouTube channel or writing articles online, I think that's something I also want to impress upon people is that when you put all of your eggs in one basket, and whether it's in a job or in a relationship or in a particular friends group, and this is what your whole identity is like, I am the person who is friends with this person. I am the girlfriend of this person. I am this job title that I have. I think that really puts you at risk of then feeling really fractured when suddenly that thing isn't true anymore. And so like what you were saying, putting your eggs in different baskets, I think is really a good way to prevent yourself from really feeling like you actually lose it all in the first place when something goes wrong. So, for example, someone in my family recently got fired from a job that they loved. And, this was a job that she really put her heart and soul into, and she had friends there, and she was fired for a stupid reason. And, she wasn't fired for political views or saying the wrong thing on Twitter. It was nonsense drama in the workplace, and that happens. And what she's experiencing now is actually really similar to what I went through when I was fired. It's this loss of the main thing that you're doing with your life. Like, you're spending 40 plus hours on this, often more. Your friends are often in your workplace. The people you're meeting to date are often in your workplace, especially when you're younger. And I think that, losing the main thing you do with all of your time can be really disruptive outside of the financial, outside of political beliefs, et cetera. And so I really want to encourage people to not, like we've talked about before, stake your identity on this single thing that isn't who you are as a person. What makes you the person who liked that thing, the person who excelled at that thing in the first place, the person that is a good friend. These things can bring value to you and bring joy into your life and make you happy. But I think that the more you can do exactly what you said, put that locus of control in yourself, be confident in who you are outside of these things. If any one thing in your life were to go, which one of those things do you feel would fracture who you think of yourself as the most? And then how can you maybe start to separate that a little and not stake your entire sense of self and personhood on a thing that isn't actually you? You are not the place that you volunteer at. You are not the political beliefs that you hold. You are not the relationships in your life. You are a totally independent whole person separate from that. And I think that that was kind of what I eventually had to come to realize. My identity was for so long wrapped up in whatever I was doing in the moment. I'm a feminist. I'm an animal rights activist. I'm a software engineer. And now I'm canceled. And so I kind of went through these various phases, and now eventually I'm starting to move away from trying to be a thing and instead just be me. And I would really encourage people to do that. And you don't have to get canceled to do that. You don't have to be fired to do that. You can start right now trying to figure out, what are the things that would really fracture you if you lost, and what can you do to sort of steel yourself against that?
Yes, 100%. And this is a little bit different, but basically one aspect of what you're saying, I want to read a tweet by Colin Wright that he wrote the other day. He said, "Don't make an identity out of your current beliefs or conclusions. These should always be tentative and open to revision. You shouldn't make yourself vulnerable to having an identity crisis when you're shown to be wrong about something." And I think that really nicely summarizes what you're just saying. And I also wanted to add, so 2 weeks ago, our episode was about social contagions among teenage girls. And MK and I both talked about how as teenage girls, we cut ourselves. But we do not make our identities around that. We're not former cutters. It's not even that we're former cutters, let alone that we were ever cutters. You know what I mean? This is not something you are. It's something that you do or something that you did in the past. We want to encourage teenage girls to not make their identities out of the struggles that they're going through and the way that those struggles are manifesting. If they're doing self-harm, if they're identifying as something else, we really want to encourage them to not make that their whole identity. And so similarly, when you're an adult, you don't want to make your belief system your whole identity, which is something that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It really leaves you open to continuing to learn and grow without having to throw out everything from your past because it no longer applies. And I think it's just something that's so important to start to do, especially as you're getting older and trying to figure out who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I also want to make sure to plug the Plebity Free Speech Fund, because this was something that we created after I was canceled, and I spoke to different people like MK and heard these different cancellation stories and really realized that one of the main problems in this current situation is that people can't speak out because they're scared of being fired. Getting people fired is the go-to form of thought control by these online mobs. We see this time and time again. They come right after your job, and sometimes worse. Sometimes they try to get people dehomed as well, which is really heinous.
And then call themselves leftists.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Free Speech Fund exists to help people who've been fired or, severely materially punished for their speech. We are a crowdsourced fund, and we are gearing up right now to make donations. We actually have a lot of money right now, and we want to give it away. So we've been pretty quiet, but we are about to get a lot louder because we have a lot going on, and we've been busy collecting some money behind the scenes for some worthy people, but we are looking for those people. So if you know of someone who could benefit from this fund, please tell them to apply. I will put all the links below, and our fund is on our website. You can find everything about us, and we also have a Patreon. So if you join Patreon, you get to know everything that we're doing. We keep you completely updated. You can also give us your feedback, and we want to take our patrons' advice into consideration. We want to have you guys help us allocate these funds to different people. So, please, if you're listening to this and you think that this fund could be for you, please apply. Please reach out to us. Like I said, we have money and we want to give it away. So this initiative is not just to help these individuals, but it is also to try to create an atmosphere in some small way where people know that there will be some support for them, and it might galvanize them a little bit to be able to sort of throw caution to the winds and throw themselves into it, like we were saying.
Yeah, so Sasha, just to clarify for listeners, what do you have to do to qualify for the Free Speech Fund?
Yeah, so it's there isn't a very strict set of criteria, except that you have to have been materially affected in some way for your speech. And you know, you do have to answer some questions about your material need, but it's not very invasive. We will work through, you know, the application process with you. It's a very short form on our website that basically just asks you what happened to you and why it was related to free speech. So if you were fired from your job, if you were deplatformed in some way, and it doesn't have to be necessarily that you lost income. It can be that you lost potential earnings, or you lost, you know, reputational, in the arena of reputation, or in some way like that. So we are new. We've only given one fund so far, one grant so far. So we're very open to different situations. And what I'm saying right now is our idea for the fund. But like I said, we do want to hear your input on our Patreon page. So it's not exactly determined who the fund, who these funds might go to. It's just people who have spoken out and who need the support.
This is so amazing. It's such a great initiative because I can think back to, you know, when I guess I saved up in order to get canceled, but at the same time, we were nervous. You know, what happens when that 3 months runs out? What if we haven't found any work yet? What if we don't have any place to go? You know, my family didn't have a room that I could crash in. So it was definitely a major fear for me, that financial side of it. And at the time, if the Free Speech Fund had existed, I think it would have been a huge support for me. And I'm so grateful that going forward, women who go through what you and I both went through are going to have at least a little bit of backup that they can use to help them get through that immediate crisis mode and into building their brighter, more independent future. It really is just this perfect little stopgap for, you know, what happens next and like getting to your next point. I think it's really amazing. I'm so glad that you're doing this, Sasha. I'm really glad to be a patron myself and be able to participate in the process of helping to allocate these grants. So I definitely really want to highly encourage everyone, please go check out the Free Speech Fund. There will certainly be a link in the description.
Absolutely. Thank you, MK. And exactly what you said. It's supposed to be something that will be a short-term help for you. The first grant we gave was in the amount of $1,300. So please do reach out to us and get involved. Okay, well, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode and hopefully got something out of it. Let us know if you've had an experience with cancellation or just some kind of intense life experience that you had to really build back from. We want to hear from you, so leave us a comment or, as usual, contact us at submit@identitycrisis.xyz.
Be sure to follow Plebity and 4W on Twitter. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the little notifications bell so that you catch us every time we are premiering here on YouTube. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. And it's actually been updated now, so you really genuinely can find this show wherever you get your podcasts.
Excellent. And to let you guys know, if you want to support us financially, you can sign up to be a patron over on the Plebity Patreon page, which will be linked below. And this is going to help us continue the project, cover the cost of doing it, and help us continue to provide it on YouTube and 4W for free. So check out our Patreon page, and if you join, know that your money will also go towards supporting our Free Speech Fund.
Be sure to also check out the partner column over on 4W, where I dive a little bit more in depth into what it's like to bounce back and build back better from being canceled.
Build back better. That was like exactly. The COVID-19. All right. Thanks, guys. All right. See you next week.
See ya.